Good evening. This is the second reading of the 2023 Woodstock Mayapple Writers Retreat, although the first was yesterday through the public library, and they will all be on Zoom. So tonight we are going to hear from Helen Ruggieri, Joyce Kessel, and John Palen, not quite in that order, I think. And our first reader is Helen Ruggieri. Helen is a retired professor of writing. Her most recent book of poetry is The Kingdom Where No One Keeps Time, from yours truly, Mayapple Press. And she has a lovely book of haiku and essays about nature called Camping in the Galaxy, from Wood Thrush Books. She lives in Olean, New York, where she has been for decades. And here is Helen.
Okay. Well, every once in a while, when you're a Virgo, you're compelled to clean out your files. It's built into your genetics, your DNA structure. So I was going through old files, and I've been writing poems almost daily since the 70s, because I studied with Bill Stafford, and he always said he writes a poem a day. And I thought, well, I could do that maybe. Of course, it turned out to be the same poem in 5 different reconstructions. But when I opened this work folder and I said, hey, some of this stuff is interesting, and I hadn't read it in a long time. So I'm going to read some poems about work. Roycroft Craftsman. Life without industry is guilt, and life without art is brutality. That's a saying from Albert Hubbard, who was a high muckety muck in the craftsman in the early part of the century. It's raining in East Aurora, a slow, misty rain falling on old snow. Fog rises from meadows, follows rivulets, gullies, and fields, flowing with the tilt of the land, carving glyphs out of snow. 100 years ago, craftsmen built a community here. Buying fieldstone for $1 a load, they built a workshop, still in use. Hand-carved beams hold the roof, the tree shape still recognizable. Carved on an oak door, a reminder. Raise the stone, and thou shalt find me. Cleave the wood, and there I am. Sometimes the chisel digs too deeply, and we kick stones, break sticks, crumple our sad little words, hands filled with fog. The old craftsman didn't reckon when the mason became a sculptor, or the very moment when utility became uselessly beautiful. Art was already in the material. They just released it. I graduated from St. Bonaventure University with a master's degree in 1972. It was a bad year. The 70s, generally speaking, was a bad decade. I couldn't get any jobs teaching because the masters made you too pricey and they didn't want you. They could get a lot of BAs really cheap. Baby boomers came and filled up every available opening. You had to go like Fargo, North Dakota, or some horrible place in Idaho or Wyoming to get a job. And I didn't do that. So I found myself working at a company called Dresser Clark. Then it became Dresser Rand, then Dresser Halliburton, then Dresser Siemens, then just Siemens. And now they're all gone. There's nothing left but some empty buildings. I got an entry-level job as a labor grade 3, the lowest except for the factory workers who were chippers and grinders who blasted sand off parts. And I worked there for 10 years, starting as a file clerk and ending as a purchasing assistant. And 2 days before my pension was to be vested, I got a call from personnel. Boom, you're gone. No pension. Dresser makes big compressors, $1 million compressors, huge compressors that pump oil through pipelines. And they take about a year to build, a very, very complicated operation. It almost stopped me from flying when I knew how much more complicated an airplane was. And so this is my filing poem. It's called Salvation by Filing. And if you heathens don't know who Calvin is, that's John Calvin, who said people were predestined. They were selected by God before birth to be saved. In the warehouse loft, rain falls rhythmically on the tin roof against the windows painted black. I file by year, by customer, surprised when my handwriting leaps out, allied, amalgamated, associated. They're redolent of daydreams I filed with them, dreams of being saved from my life, dreams of rescue, of being rescued by a call, a letter, an anonymous benefactor come to free me from boredom, from slavery. Calvin said some of us are elected before birth to shine among the saved, while others must be personally involved. Confession of sins, acceptance of what is, but no answers, no changes came to free me. The days fall away from the quotidian sky, face black windows like the eyes of an oil-rich sheik, relentlessly ordered, habitually small rhythms, not quite musical, and almost lyric. Xerox, Yacimentos, Zenith. I knew nothing about machinery. So I had to learn a new vocabulary. I knew what an impeller was and various assorted parts. But this poem is called Centrifugal, Centripetal, and they're types of compressors. So if you don't know, I try to explain it in the poem in my hapless way. When I first worked in the parts department, I got them mixed up, had to chant to myself, centrifugal, moving away from the center, outward, like a galaxy dispersing. Centripetal, moving in toward the center, a black star holding everything into itself. Centrifugal, centripetal. I typed orders imagining great compressors, pumping Arabian deserts, palm trees, oases, disappearing at the horizon, centrifugal, the world, and coming back, moving oil from under faraway deserts to the refinery to my car, moving toward me, centripetal, I-centered. And I memorized what I had to, but everything turned to metaphor. So after a couple of years, I got promoted from filing. I was reading welding specifications, and if the compressor falls apart, you know who's responsible. Reading the welding specs. When I did piping and welding specs, I thought in straight lines, joints, connections, types of welds, MIG, TIG, jig, binding one thing to the other. I followed the lines on blueprints, watching for illogical jumps, impossible curves where size explodes. If there should be an elbow, an L, a special weld, if carbon becomes stainless and the blue paper changed into mechanical steel. Working parts, movement, connections, centrifugal, oil soothing it all, smoothing it, keeping things running, keeping things cool. I dream the folds open and the plan of the future floats like oil on water. I rise and file, run back up, sort and purge. Out in the fields and refineries, my pipes keep it all running. My welds hold it all together. my straight lines over the curve of the earth. It takes them about a year to build a compressor. And when it's done, there's a big celebration. And nobody thought to break champagne bottles over it. But that was my idea. This is compressor parade. In the Dresser-Ran parking lot, the employees watch the compressor they spent a year building get loaded on a double-axle tandem trailer for a trip to the docks some 300 miles away. Once a saffron-robed priest came to bless the journey, but today only us. The car in front carries a wide load sign, warning about the oversized load barreling south. Two city black and whites block traffic on Wayne Street, and two state police cars wait to escort the trailer to the expressway. The guide car pulls out. The trailer jackknifes onto the street, followed by the city cop cars. The troopers watch as the parade turns toward the ramp for 86 East. The last car struts its wide load sign and follows along. The city cars peel off. The parade is over. On the other side of the world, a pipeline carries oil over the sands. Our compressor is going there to pump the dark blood that fuels our lives. I was in a workshop and someone suggested that you take a famous poem and rewrite that. So I chose those winter Sundays by Robert Hayden, and it's those Sunday nights. Hope all my misery comes through. On Sunday nights, dread gathers under the bones of my chest, filling the empty spaces with clocks ticking, a copier running diagnostics, a phone at the end of the hall, a buzzing ballast ready to go dark, a door closing softly. On Sunday nights, the dread sings about all the hours to be filtered before time comes back to me. All the facts accumulating, dripping under my finger pads with a soft electronic click, signed, "Sincerely yours." On Sunday nights, I shine my shoes, check the soles for holes, press my shiny suit, and pack a lunch. I set the clock, my hair, lay out the clothes I'll wear, and crawl in bed with dread. Who always sleeps there Sunday nights? I guess I'm not sure this works out, but the opposite of working is not working and being unemployed. And I had worked for Dresser for 10 years. And 2 days before my pension was to be vested, it was a Memorial Day weekend. I got called over to personnel and said, "Well, sorry, but we don't need you anymore because we just spent X number of months working overtime like dogs, entering 9-digit part numbers for the new system they were going to be computerized and go online." So I stood out in the parking lot with my little cup filled with the vendor pens. They took off my badge and away I went. This one's called The Unemployment Line. Your life, the one you intended to live, the one you wanted to live, swept away. War, death, illness, a bad economy. Dazzled on the edge above a gulf of indecision, of interviews gone wrong, and we'll call you, never coming. So you get in line, stand behind the white line pasted on the dirty rug. Watch your toes almost touching, as if you couldn't hear the one ahead of you in line, repeating the same sad story. And the guys were really nice that worked there. They would say, "What's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?" Construction guys there. It was winter. If I'd had those years, if I hadn't taken the job, we'd have gone on welfare, filling out forms, tucking my head, and I couldn't abide that. I was too stubborn to submit. So I took the job, kept it 10 long years, good years, prime years, years my mind was clear as decanted wine. I sold those years for bread and beans, swallowed the words that boiled in my head. If I had those years, I'd have sagas and novels, the long reach of their tellings lost in the ringing phone, the formal response, the snick of the keys under the fluorescent and conditioned air humming from the ducts, while back and forth the fingers go, dreaming of Michelangelo. Thank you, T.S. Eliot, for that lovely ending. I went to a writer's retreat in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. It's called Starry Night. And Truth or Consequences is there because of the mineral springs. And the spa is like to die for. And this poem is called Archimedes. At the mineral springs spa, I sit in the hottest pool and watch the muddy waters of the Rio Grande flow to the south. A heavy-set man gets into the pool and the water level goes up an inch or so. I think volume displacing water. I forgot that principle, along with so much more. The soak is $10 an hour and worth it. But as I watch the moving river, I think of those who want to live as we do, to cross over. Imagine Archimedes running naked from his bath, shouting, "Eureka, I have found it." Yes, this is the place for thinking of displacement, of those, and thinking about those who work long hours in the fields and how it would be for them to strip, let their tired bodies drift in the mineral springs, and think of ancient Greeks inventing theorems and principles in the privacy of their baths. And they might, feeling the heat soak into their muscles, think, "Eureka." Finding the way. For years, I drove to work the same way. And now sometimes I find myself pulling into my old parking space, sitting at my old desk, entering orders stacked up in my absence. Sometimes a thought will lead me in a huge circle, synapses firing wildly. My mother reading, and I come to visit, and she keeps reading, conversation and annoyance. She'd rather be alone with her book, and I feel bad again, as if she hadn't been dead for 10 years. The bird of memory, tracing magnetic routes to find true north. A tug at the feathers, shifting direction. Excuse me. It's made of calcium, they say. Old calcium's better than the stuff made today. Excuse me again. I'll start that stanza again. The bird of memory tracing magnetic routes to find true north, a tug at the feathers shifting directions. It's made of calcium, they say. Old calcium's better than that stuff that's made today. The new stuff cheaper, crumbly. Excuse me. Fragile as the aged bones of small birds. Soon I'll write about my birth, my conception, the books my mother read while she was waiting. And later I'll sit at my desk, all the orders entered. It was horrible in a way to relieve those work years. I was really a miserable sot. But getting laid off was a blessing because I went back to school, got an MFA, got a teaching gig, felt 10 years at least younger, and I didn't have to contend with blueprints anymore, at least not those kind of blueprints. Lesson plans, maybe. And this is an old poem. It's sort of not about work, but I wanted to end with it because it's upbeat a little anyway. It's called The Flying Wallendas. And these Wallendas were not the tightrope walkers, but they were the trapeze artists, part of the family. They're cousins, I believe. The Flying Wallendas. Trapezes hang above the midway. Angel and Steve make the long climb up vertical ladders to a platform where they pose in their shiny white sequins, acknowledging the crowd below. This will be their final performance. Angel has cancer, and doctors say even if surgery is successful, she'd have to carry an oxygen tank as if she lived in an underwater kingdom. Steve, a Vietnam vet, wants all the MIAs to come home, dedicates tonight's performance to all those missing souls. Without a net, they fly above us, somersaulting in the air, catching hands one to another. We watch them as if they were another species, gracefully soaring above the Pennsylvania earth. Well, thank you very much for listening to those years of misery. I hope to do a manuscript eventually. I'm going to call it Alarm Clock Blues. And now my partner in crime will be coming up, John Palen. John has been a Mayapple author for more than 25 years. And he first attended this retreat when it was Rust Belt Retke. He now lives in Urbana, Illinois, and spends his time writing, raising vegetables, and marveling that my 3 grandchildren are now on the cusp of adulthood. John Palen.
Thank you, Helen. Wasn't that a great reading?
Thank you.
It's great to be back in a Mayapple retreat, to see you all again and to hear and read your wonderful poems. Thanks to Judy for making this happen, and to Helen and my other workshop partner, Joyce. I'll start with some poems we've workshopped this time. This is called Grizzly Bear Sow. In fall, she eats, has to, all the time, the manic insatiability for ground squirrels, huckleberries, cutworm moths, and now the drug of corn, a new crop in these parts. Corn's rich and easy, and she needs to put on fat, lots of it, before winter. Then she'll make a den for warmth and safety high on the slope, a snow-plugged tunnel angling up to a cramped chamber lined with boughs and duff. For 5 months in twilight sleep, she'll slowly tick over, eat nothing, remetabolize shit and urine to make it through. The cubs come naked, blind, helpless, small as moles. They'll nuzzle close, suck her gaunt by spring. They grow quickly on the mountain, feasting on carrion, fleshy roots, young elk. At ripening time, she'll lead them down into the valley for apples and the corn. If you struggle so hard to farm that you need to grow corn in grizzly country, do not go in the field when it's tall. You won't know she's there until she's there. My father takes me to Fall Market in Kansas City. Traveling clothing salesmen crowd the Mulebach Hotel, show samples in their rooms, spring suits on wheeled racks, shirts fanned out on beds, pajamas and robes stacked on dressers. My cautious father will mostly buy what he buys for the store each autumn, plain blue and white dress shirts in Oxford cloth and broadcloth, short-sleeve plaids and checks, suits in grays and muted blues with just a thread of color. He orders shirts by the gross, suits and blazers by the dozens, spends thousands in a single day. A sudden gleam in his eye. What's hot? What'll be big next spring? The salesman lays out pink polos, charcoal slacks, Hawaiian shirts with green and yellow neon fish. I'll take 24 each of those, my gambler father says. See how they do. Left behind. At 60, I understood what I heard and read. Now I lose my mother tongue in a thicket of new tech terms, auto models, acronyms, urban slang. As it becomes more strange, I become more of a stranger. What to do with WESAC on a T. Chopper ASPX web shell in a headline. The sign on the sleek new building says infinity. I don't know what they do there, what they sell. Crosstalk is an erasure by a poet on meth. The phone repeats, your call is important to us. The phone repeats, your call is important to us. I'd be better off in Germany. I'd know only the essentials there. Ich bin verloren, hilf mir bitte. Dankeschön, vielen Dank. The German people would understand. Be kind. I'd live a sad happiness on so few words. How to bake bread. Do it once or twice a week for 20 or 30 years. Combine yeast, salt, sugar, oil, and water in a bowl. Mix in flour until it's too stiff to beat. Knead on a clean enough counter, adding flour until the dough feels right. Put it into loaf pans, let it rise, and bake in a hot oven until it's done. Don't pay too much attention to people who say it needs less yeast or a special kind of flour or caraway seed or an egg and should be kneaded on a floured cloth or a clean bamboo cutting board for 10 minutes or 12 and left to rest and kneaded again and baked with hot bricks in the oven or river stones or water in a pan. My neighbor dies. I'll never again feel the dead weight of your heavy body as I help you over our door sill for movie night, or watch as your quick mind pounces on a weak fact to keep an argument going, or see you struggle to raise a chocolate to your mouth. And I go out and rake the goddamned leaves in the goddamned yard. Here's a poem about work. Burnout. Photographers are sloppy dressers in mesh vests with a dozen pockets, wrinkled, untucked shirts over tees, faded jeans, scuffed shoes. Camera angle is everything. They have to be ready to shoot a celeb in a posh lobby, a perp, a body in a homeless camp in the rain, and they can't do that in a suit. They come to think of themselves as invisible when they scoot on their butts in a committee room, crouch in an alley between trash bins, wade a flooded roadside ditch to put their bodies where they have to be, and they can't do that in a suit. Sometimes they've seen so many perp walks, refugees, senators, stars, and models with empty eyes, fish washed up on oily beaches, parents outside schools, their children shot to pieces, that they don't just feel invisible, they feel nothing and they can't do it anymore. On hearing the Goldberg variations, I arrive early with a book, The Old Curiosity Shop, and wonder why I'm here. I'm tired, catching a cold, and worried about my wife, who's worried about the kids. It's Dickens' worst novel, but I plow dutifully ahead until the artist walks on, sits at the harpsichord, sets out across Bach's aria and 30 variations. Before long, things begin to feel okay. My snuffly nose, rejection notices, my aging body, all okay. Even terrible mistakes, insults, and cruelties come to seem only so much spilled milk now. And somewhere around variation 26, it becomes okay if I nod off. It's been a long day. I'm only human. My wife and kids will be all right. When Bach's gentle aria returns and nudges me awake, I feel a pang and want the music to go on, though endings, too, are all right now. Everything's all right, really, though nothing's changed. Love Among the Penguins, with thanks to Naira de Gracia's The Last Cold Place. It's halfway to summer on the Antarctic Circle, a break in the world's worst weather, with temps above zero and moderate gales, while the chin-strap penguins are making nests from pebbles. Pebbles are all they have, and males fight over the good ones, slap, screech, tear at each other, tumble over the shit-covered slope until one decides, oh, never mind, and the other waddles with the rock in his beak to where his mate awaits him. He drops it carefully on the pile. They face each other, stretch wide open beaks to the sky and croon. Then she moves the rock to a better place. Going to screen share some things here. Some of you will remember Li Tian from long ago Rust Belt Retke workshops. Lee died on March 10th of this year, and this poem is for him. Lee Tian, 1933-2023. The Mandarin glottals from deep in your throat made conversation a slog across a stony field. You tripped often on my Midwestern idioms. So many understandings and wrong turns. Laughter kept us friends for 40 years. For a while now, I have been writing ekphrastic poems in response to paintings by Picasso. I'll close with two of those. This is a response to his self-portrait with a palette, which he painted in 1906, and the painting is in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Announcement. Am I still screen sharing?
You have to go back in.
Go back in?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Announcement. No more masquerades for me, no world-weary harlequins, sardonic winter wanderers. I am Picasso, the painter, 25, Iberian, and I'm done with melancholy posturing. Whatever pain I've caused or suffered, I obliterate with this gray wall at my back. Humble only before my task, sleeves rolled, I wait for what presents itself. Brown as desert sandstone, I stand erect on soil that in time will break me down, analyze me to the last atom, but not yet. And this last one is, the painting is Self-Portrait with a Palette. It's also in the Philadelphia Museum. He painted it in 1921. Announcement. I'm sorry. On the wrong page. This is a Cubist work, three musicians in Commedia dell'arte costume, Harlequin, Pierrot, and the monk. And in my poem, I imagine them as pit musicians in a modern opera company, and one of them is the speaker of the poem. Down in the pit. Our chief executive wears Armani, talks visions, missions, and goals. The board chairman wonders why a tuba player makes as much as a violinist. The writhing maestro conducts the audience through the usual emotions. We're lucky if he's sober and leaves us alone. And here we are, Harlequin, Pierrot, and the monk, night after night in the crowded pit. We do that spooky stuff we've learned at such cost, raising dead notes to life, waiting for the rare hour when some wild god plugs our drop cord into the universal grid, and even we don't understand how we got to be so good. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And our next reader is Joyce Kessel, a poet, teacher of writing and literature, and I just found out today, at the age of 24, she was part owner of a women's professional softball team. Welcome, Joyce.
Hello. I'm very proud and pleased to work with John and Helen. I kind of asked for John, and he gives us far too much credit. There's not a lot we can do with his poems except appreciate them. And I think this is either my 12th or baker's dozen of times at Mayapple. I started out in Saginaw, and I've been very happy to be in Woodstock. And Shannon, I miss the Valletta too. So I have some Buffalo poems. I have some poems that I worked on with my group. I have some older poems I revised, and I have at least one brand new poem. So I'm going to take you into Buffalo first. Imagine it being winter in Buffalo this past winter. We are often unfairly known for our winters. This won't be the snowiest, despite 3 major storms, 117 official inches of snow, nor the coldest, 65 degrees Wednesdays, but officially the weirdest. Zamboni thick ice coating bushes, is slip and slide sidewalks, scuttling like penguins in parking lots. In Buffalo, we waited out, ignoring the groundhog. I grew up in the village of Hamburg, and it's outside of Buffalo. It's known for the Erie County Fair, which starts tomorrow if it ever stops raining. And so I go there to visit once in a while. I don't go in the house, but I drive by. Sometimes I just need to drive by. Try to imagine the new family and rooms that were ours for so long. Spotting toys littering the yard, strange cars in the drive. I can still hear the squeak of certain stairs. My room at the top with its corked ceiling. My protest against a house full of wood paneling. The side dormer where my desk fit. The window which caught calls of friends to come out and play. The basement with the original raw beam low ceiling where we learned to duck. The front porch where I slept on hot summer nights. We moved the kitchen from back to side to keep the pipes from creasing, but this floor slanted down too, so the jello never set evenly. This rotation of rooms put Dad's pile of papers away from visitors' eyes, reams of 12-page multi-carbon letters and newspaper clippings he never did organize. We had to tiptoe past with a slow hula hoop dance to avoid landslides. What have they done since inside those walls? When I was working on this poem earlier, I had to kind of explain to John and Helen what about my dad, because I used the word missives, and they asked me to write letters, and so I remembered this poem. It's called Dad's Letters. Before email, we were a post office family, making daily runs to run off packets of letters, buying stamps like they were bubble gum. Dad kept vigil near the front door for Roy, our letter carrier, who'd huff up the steps, burdened at this one stop with letters, postcards, dozens of magazines, and the requisite junk mail. The mail carriers at the other end probably cursed the man who stuffed the envelopes with fuzzy carbon copies of single-spaced epistles that weighed them down, unless they were other Roys. We were an international postal clan. We crossed the border into Canada, where customs asked our business, "Where are you going?" The answer would be, as often, post office, as Chinese food. All the good Chinese was in Fort Erie. What Dad would do with email, I can't fathom, but the cloud, wherever it is, would leak a rainfall while I help Roy and company bask on a sunny beach with a well-earned drink or two. Those of you who have been around know that I had a book published about my experiences with the Catholic Church called Saints, Dealing with Saints. And so this is a reasonably new poem about saints called Sainthoods. Curiosity about saints filled my childhood. My grade school honored Pete and Paul. Other area churches were named for Matt, James, and Bernie. I was drawn to martyrs, some more obscure or demoted. I missed Chris on the dashboard when he was fired. I prayed, Tony, 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 to find lost items. Opened my wallet for kids in hospital at St. Jude's. Gave my nephew Mike's medal to take on deployment. I liked Catherine of Siena because she was a writer too. Disappointed when I discovered she might not be my feast day saint after all. But I still hold stock in Frank with his birds. This is a poem that Wendy and I worked with, and I've reworked it, and I hope this is better, and I hope it's clearer. Proof of age. We hung out on the hill overlooking the thruway, drinking lightly spiked high C, singing AM radio hits feeling immortal. Older, we parked by the airport with bottles of Boone's Farm, watching for submarine races. Older still, we snuggled together with Vatus or something stronger. A rocky beach on a cold night with a pint of Christian Brothers brandy taught us temporary abstinence. Later, dorm parties with a trash can filled with booze were prelude to long night beer pitchers and all morning hangovers. As we aged, nights are marked by expensive wines, more conscious of our inevitable demise. This is an old poem. I can still see the boy who sat behind me in 1963 when we were in school and they stopped class to tell us that the president had been shot. What the survivor learns. The first time I saw a boy cry, sobbing at his desk, was when Kennedy died. Not Robert, but Jack. About that time, a cousin collapsed on a ski slope for no known reason. My mom cried harder than I had ever seen. Except for goldfish and fledgling birds, my first real funeral was a seatmate in my homeroom. Then months began to fill with deaths, older relatives and neighbors, though dying was still a childhood mystery. I didn't personally know anyone who died of addiction or drunk driving, but the body count from Vietnam grew and grew. Then a litany of doctor's visits, diseases, operations for parents and in-laws, phone calls taut with labored breathing, ambulance rides, all-night ER visits. I was schooled in the dead time of hospitals, stretching on and on with not much information, unsure hope. I developed a waiting room persona that calmed others, but not me. On to rehab and nursing homes, temporary stops to better health, where I held hands, smoothed brows, counted down monitors, arranged burials, filled out more and more paperwork, all that is behind the curtain that conceals what dying entails. In some ways, this is a Buffalo poem, and in some ways, it's a political poem. It's called The Shadow Workforce. Buffalo smells like Cheerios, and the yellow boxes are filled by school-aged immigrants brought north to work in factories. 12-year-olds are roofing. Others butcher chickens or make socks to escape gangs in Guatemala or Mexico. They are ground up by corporations and jobs no one wants in the ungolden streets of America, an unwelcoming country unwilling to give them a legal home. Children with brown skins and poor geographies, unprotected by child labor laws or the promise of an education they are too sleepy to absorb. I pulled out this poem because I've been thinking a lot about what we call migrants, immigrants, refugees. And this starts with information from the International Organization for Migration. The central Mediterranean crossing between Libya and Italy or Malta is by far the deadliest in the world. This is called migratory failure. I see them out on the border as noble birds with iridescent flowers left to drown and die in heat and hunger. Yet these are earthbound souls daring to cross wild waters with no promise of success in their desperation. Thousands in migration, even flocks of fledglings, sprung too soon from nests, their wings unsteady and fragile, suckered by corrupt coyotes, abandoned in high seas and on dark beaches, left to die in stinking refrigerator trucks parked on roadsides to nowhere, tossed like driftwood, floating bulbous and barnacled, trapped and discarded like windblown bags on barbed wire fences, birds unable to fly, refugees with no refuge. This is a poem that's gone under so many iterations. Either people are going to recognize part of it or they're going to say, where did that come from? It's called Snake Oil. Snake oil salesmen once went door to door, playing on fragile hope. Our hucksters pop up everywhere, just as swarmy, getting richer off fear. The would-be dictators breed like rabid raccoons. A hamstrung Congress is blind to climate warnings, strip gays and trans kids of their rights, send the homeless and hungry to sleep on streets, if they see them at all. Women seek control of women from their wombs to their tongues, like Atwood's handmaids imprisoned in bedrooms. bombarded by so many sources for news, 24-hour cycles imploding in our brains, we are tempted to turn everything off. However, not knowing has never made us safe. Don't know if anybody caught it, but the new thing in Florida is they're going to show videos to kindergartners through 5th grade on how climate change is not real. What the buck? This is called recension. I looked it up. It's a editorial critical term for when people go through your poems and help you take things out. It's called recension. And it's dedicated to everyone who's ever helped me with my poems. It's not easy putting words on paper, like digging through a town dump, sorting through recyclables. Syllables counted, discarded, fretted over, erased, rewritten. The white page soaks up lines like a drunk reeling home in the dark, the key missing the lock. Yet each afternoon, through pruning, the poem's bones remain, shining through all the black redactions. This is my newest poem. The only one who has heard it is my partner. It's dedicated to the guys who are staying at Leslie's, and may they take it in the spirit in which I hope is fun. I think Bob will. I think Leslie will. Steve, I never know. It's called 3 Old Poets at Mayapple 2023. The faces of the rest of us show up on Zoom at the appointed morning hour, chat briefly, then head to our breakout rooms to work on poems. The 3 old guys are not among us, but promise to be working, while I imagine them in togas, smoking cigars around a keg, a veteran poetry fret with a sign on the door, no girls allowed. How to unwrite a poem. Begin at the very end. Erase the triumphant couplet. Trim the conflicting metaphors. Tighten the spaces between stanzas. Expunge any unnecessary adjectives. Apologize for the easy cliches. Wander back to the uncurious first line and stare into the blankness. This has not been the easiest summer for me, as Kathy and Jill, and probably Helen, remember. I'm having some medical problems that confirm that I am not just a klutz. So this is called losing ground. The moment of impact registers, a beat too late. A kaleidoscope of another bruise, another indignity. A fall is only a fall. Yet 3 concussions in a month is a pattern explained by failing balance and gravity's insistence. My mother fell again and again. Now fears my own steps. I was reading a story by Hilla Bloom, and I came to this line, and I stopped, and I said, I have to go write something. The line of the story says, worry is a straitjacket, and so is love. So this is called Straitjackets. In the middle of this short story, this is the truth I stumble on. I watch you fall, and I am helpless. As you sleep, I chart your breathing and hold mine till I see your chest rise and fall. Others move on. We are held in place. Our calendar is marked by injuries instead. Plans postponed and canceled. We are here, entangled. And I want to end with a love poem, as I always try to do, because as our friends who participated in our wedding, our legal union, our wedding, this is our anniversary. We never remember it. I don't know how long ago it was made legal. What I know is that we've been together for 41 and a half years, because that's what's important to me. This is called One Sure Thing. I triple check recipes, do a daily final search for keys, glasses, phone, relock the doors at night after making sure the garage is closed, worry I have dialed wrong or forgotten to pay a bill, seal the envelope without signing the check, send out birthday cards weeks too late, Christmas cards, maybe next year, leave laundry in the washer overnight, put out the garbage can hours late, but I never, ever forget to kiss you each night as we crawl in bed. Thank you for listening.
We'll get you for that, Joyce.
I'm sure you will.
Well, Leslie never came, but
Well,
he'll get
then
to
it's
watch
just
the
about him.
video.
It's just about him. Oh, there he is. You missed
Where?
it, Leslie.
Oh, he's next to Steve. That's why.
Ah,
Right. He didn't log in separately, so I didn't know he had come. I'm glad you
Ah.
came, Leslie.
me too. See, I wasn't sure those guys existed except for when they read last night.
I see you, Steve. Wait a minute, you're muted. You're
Hey,
still
Jill.
muted. You have to unmute yourself. I
Well,
can't do
shit.
it.
Yeah, we don't exist except for those moments.
So how much of it did Leslie actually hear?
The last 5 poems.
Oh, well, I'll post it tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I had some people who wanted to come in and either they couldn't because they got caught up in stuff or time. So I'm hoping they can.
Well,
Yeah.
this year I will not try to edit things. I will just put them up.
Mhm.
Well, I want to say those were 3 amazing readings. Thank you so much. They were tremendous, all of them.
You were very kind.
Yes. Thank you. It was wonderful.
And we
John,
will,
I haven't heard you before, and I like very much what you did. I hope you keep on.
Thank you, Steve.
Leave it.
well,
Joyce, we need to catch up.
Definitely, definitely.
I'm gonna come see you in December when school's out.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
you and Leanna.
All right. All right. Or we'll drive through Bethlehem again.
Both are perfectly great. Yes.
Yeah.
Helen, you're muted. If you said something, I didn't hear it.
I'm going to Ohio, so I'll come through that way and then I'll
Okay.
go down.
Okay. You can even
And see
bring
Helen if she's around.
you can even bring your dog.
I'm bringing Lily. She's coming with me.
Okay.
Night, everybody. Thanks
Good
for
night.
coming.
Thanks,
7 o'clock
John.
tomorrow.
Yep.
Right.
And that's
Right.
Kathy and Penny and me.
Yep.
Okay. Looking forward to it. Good
Bye,
night.
Good
everyone.
night.
Good
Love
night.
y'all.
Love you all.